Today, we have a counselor, author, and passionate child advocate joining us with over 15 years' experience of helping families reconnect. Jenny Hornby brings a playful yet profound approach to emotional wellness. Through her work, including her book, Made for This, Jenny empowers parents to support their children through big feelings, build resilience, and bring joy back into the healing journey. If you've ever wondered how to better connect with your children and bring more compassion into your home, this episode is for you. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
So, so Jenny, why is play so important as part of the healing journey?
Yes, play is, especially with children. I mean, adults, we need to play too, but play allows you to really open up and be more vulnerable. When we think about our own memories of play, there's a sense of softening that happens in your body. There's an openness that you have to the world around you and to the people around you. And so a lot of these kind of protective features that are inside of us that sometimes make it hard to concentrate and learn, when those protective features can kind of step to the side and we can engage in play, we're able to learn, we're able to connect, we're able to grow in really deep ways. So it's actually really important, and it's not just a silly thing. You know what I mean?
So it kind of bypasses all of the guards and the blocks and the
Yes.
conscious mind and all of
Yes,
that.
yes, absolutely. And it's interesting too, when I started training in play therapy, I learned a little bit about the brain, and, I'm still a student of the brain, like most of us are, I guess. And a lot of the areas in our brain that hold images and pictures are really close to the part of our brain that holds our emotion. And so, especially for children, allowing them to use their toys, use their miniatures, and play rather than having a talk and a conversation, it allows them to go deeper into a more emotional part of themselves, and not having to find language again bypasses, like you said, some of the obstacles that would slow down processing and slow down connecting. So,
So, as an adult, are you
yeah.
able to do this too?
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Um, it's really, we were just talking today about, we stop playing not because we've grown up. you know, we 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 grow up and we stop playing. Like, we need to keep play, in our lives. And
Yeah.
what does play look like as an adult? So I think for me, it's kids help us. If I'm around kids, it kind of helps encourage me to be playful again and remember. But play might have a little bit less energy required because we're more tired as adults than we were as kids. So, maybe it's, floating on the water and splashing water around. Maybe it's walking. And, I think people who watch birds and watch nature, there's a playfulness and an excitement. Maybe, even the place I go work out has a Zumba class, and everyone in there is so playful during their Zumba class. They're dancing and they're laughing and they're being silly. So I think we can find it in exercise too. And a lot of people, still play games and find ways. Um, but there is, right? All of these examples, it requires either me connecting with myself and with nature, or connecting with other people too, and kind of having that sense of belonging as we play. I always say, you're playing and connecting when you look up at someone who's with you and you both smile at each other and you both kind of have that sparkle. That's the sign, like, we're doing this. We're playing and we're connecting and building this attachment with each other. So.
And then how does that help you process what's going on? Because
Mm,
in my mind, I can conceptualize it with a child. You're playing with a doll and then the doll gets
right.
an owie. And then, you can kind of understand as a viewer, you can see kind of what the child
Mm,
is processing and what's going
right.
on. But as an adult, going on a walk or being in a Zumba class or things like splashing
Yes.
around, how does that help you?
Well, it helps in lots of ways. I'll say, for me in the therapy setting, so if I have a client with me, I'll use art, or I have something called sand tray, which is this large like sandbox that's up on a table, and I have all these miniatures that go with it. And sometimes for adults, when they're having a hard time finding language, or because of just the extent of trauma, it's hard for them to feel safe enough to really find language for what's happening. It's all very obscure still for them. Um, I'll use art, or I'll have them use the sand tray because they can bypass language, right? Um, so that's more of a like indirect approach to start to connect with whatever's happening in that internal world. So in the therapy setting, I might use it like that. Um, I think I don't know if you're familiar with EMDR. Do you guys
Yeah,
talk about EMDR?
we have
Okay.
spoken about it. Yeah.
Okay.
For those who don't know, can you give a brief description of what it is?
Sure. So EMDR was started by Francine Shapiro, and she had found out she had cancer, and she went on a walk as she was like processing this terrible news. And she noticed when she came home from her walk that she felt better, and she got real curious about it. And she started to study the effects of rapid eye movement in our sleep. Our eyes are moving back and
Mhm.
forth, and we are processing painful things. And she found that when we turn towards painful things and we bring bilateral stimulation into that experience, it helps us get desensitized to it. So it's not as much of a distress for us. And then as we're desensitized, we're able to bring in more like helpful beliefs and things like that. So with her cancer, instead of this is hopeless and I can't do this, which is not going to help her. She was able, after she desensitized, to just be like, okay, I'm going to make a plan. I'm capable. I can work through this. I can handle it, kind of thing. So EMDR is just beautiful for trauma work. But I use it a lot for, it goes very naturally with play. So if we're taking a walk, right, and we're discussing hard things, our feet are moving, so we're bilateral, right?
Mhm.
Um, so bringing that movement can really help. Uh, and it's funny, a lot of EMDR therapists will do that. They'll take their clients and go walk while they're processing. And again, because you're shoulder to shoulder with the person, in a lot of ways, it brings down their distress because it's not having to look someone in the eye. Um, we're both kind of shoulder to shoulder and moving through this together. So anything that can help bring down some of those barriers to allowing yourself to open, we want to use. So if it's shoulder to shoulder, if it's walking, if it's playing, if it's art, um, what can we do that just can help us connect with where some of these hurts are that are really turning into suffering for us?
So when you work with families and you work with children, because I know
Mm,
that's your special place, but
yeah,
we all were once children,
right.
and
That's right.
and a lot of us have children. But when you're working with them, how are you dealing with like the parents have suffered trauma
Right.
and they want to be a better parent for the child,
Hmm.
but they have old patterning and old beliefs and
Right.
that are really tripping them up. How do you
Right.
navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think about families I've worked with, a lot of times families come because they're focused on their child. They'll come and say, please help my child with all these things that they're dealing with. But as we dig deeper, is when we realize, oh, mom and dad have actually experienced a lot of trauma and have never gotten help, but they're motivated to do it for their kid, you know? So
Yeah.
a lot of times that's kind of how the therapeutic relationship has started out for me is it started with the kid being the one that's identified as needing the help. But as we explore, we learn like, oh, it's actually the parents, are coming into parenting with all these, old tapes that are playing in their mind. And so as their child gets angry or as their child gets scared, they're reverting back to being a child themselves, in these unsafe places in their mind. So a lot of it is kind of peeling back the onion, and finding out like, oh, what's the story? Oh, okay, And then I typically will work with the parents individually some, or, have the parents get connected with their own therapist so that they can do their work. Um, and, the goal is trying to help the parent start to just give themselves permission to
Mm.
be upset. A lot of them are so scared they don't want to repeat the patterns, right? There's so much like don't want to be their mother, don't want to be their father, don't,
Yeah.
and parenting just triggers us so much. Not only are you exhausted and tired, but you love this person so much, this little person who their job is to test the boundaries, and to push limits, and they're gonna trigger the anger and trigger the rejection. They're gonna stir up all the things. So what I like to do is my favorite is if we can all be in the same room together as the parents and the child and just engage together. I typically let the kid kind of direct the session. It just helps them stay engaged. So if they want to draw together, if they want to play a game together, if they want to make something in the sand tray together, I sort of let them lead it. It doesn't really matter what we're doing. But then I'm helping them maybe pause when they notice, kind of some of these things that they naturally might react to. Let me think of some examples. So I have a family that I've worked with in the past who, the child was very vulnerable to share about their own anger. And the one parent's response, because of his own story, was, you can't do that. You can't say that. You can't feel that way. That's not okay. And just sort of like boom, 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 shut it down, you know? And so it's nice to be there knowing this parent's heart is good and their intention is good, but to say, okay, hold on a second. Maybe we can just say to the child, oh, you were upset. Tell me about it, and
Yeah.
and teaching parents how to like let children have some space to feel and experience what's going on, rather than what we typically do is we go to the extreme, right? We like explode with our emotion and it takes over, or we shut it down and it's not allowed to exist at all. So a huge thing is just trying to help families learn how to be in the middle. Like we can notice this, we can give this some room, not let it take over and not push it to the side. And so helping parents, number one, kind of engage with their kids and letting their kids lead play and lead engagement and that kind of fun way to connect. But then also when their child has big feelings, learning how to just acknowledge it, give it space, be with them. And of course, we have to make sure they're safe, and set limits. But we really don't have to do that as much as we think. Kids kind of, they have a survival technique inside of them, too. So it's fun to like help parents kind of explore that growing edge. Like, let's just give that anger some space, give that fear some space. Let's see if we can just be in that with your child together. And then later, maybe with the parent, we might follow up and just be like, okay, what happened inside of you? What did that stir up inside of you? And then owning it. Like, that's my work to do as mom, or that's my work to do as dad. That's not the kid doing anything wrong, because they were upset. So it's a lot of fun. I love it. And having them all together because they all trigger each other, all sorts of stuff gets stirred up. But
So processing your feelings like this as a child, how does it
mm,
benefit you in your life?
oh my goodness, it's so powerful. Yeah, so many times I sit with clients, these kids that I'm working with, and I'm like, I wish I'd had this as a kid. I don't know if you feel that way, but just
Yeah.
having that permission, I I think for most of us, and if you look at society nowadays, um, where would we be if we could notice how we're feeling and respond to it in a healthy and appropriate way? Like, where would this world be? It would be so much better. If we could notice, like, wow, you hurt my feelings, and not like retaliate. Maybe wars could end. But it's just, I think it will, like, I'm hoping just make for a better world. If kids can just learn that they can notice how they feel, then no feelings are bad, and then know how to express it or communicate it or allow it, to be seen and heard in a way that's appropriate and okay. I'll tell you a story. I had this fun intervention with kids where I have a carpet in my office and I have all these different feeling faces, like every therapist who works with kids has. And we'll play this fun game called the magic carpet. And we'll grab one of the faces. So, say we grab like a sad face. And soon as that face touches the carpet, we both experience what sadness is like. And we talk about, like, what does it feel like? And what is happening around us when we're in this sad place? And it's such a fun thing because it's like we're on a magic carpet ride, and it's this magical carpet. Um, but I'll never forget doing it with one kid. He was like 5. And just for him to express anger, sadness, hurt, fear, joy, nervousness, and be able to name it and talk about it and move around in that space of what this world is like, it was really powerful. And it helped him. His mom was like, oh, he's doing so much better. I think we have to like ignore it and shut it down to make these really good kids.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work.
So when people talk about inner child work, is this similar?
For sure. Yeah. Um, and it's funny you say that because when I went into therapy, I think I would roll my eyes at all the things, inner child work, inner peace, all these things. I just would like roll my eyes. But it's so true, especially with trauma. I don't know if you ever have looked into like Richard Schwartz. He has a lot on parts, the internal family
Yeah.
system, and this idea that when we've experienced trauma, that part of us that held that memory kind of gets wrapped up, and then these protective features come, you know, and there's the part of us that's going to try to keep us from feeling that way ever again. So maybe we're going to be very controlling. Maybe we're going to please everybody. We're not going to upset anyone. And so this little hurt little girl doesn't get exposed. And if she does get exposed, then this other protective part comes who helps numb the pain. Maybe I spend a lot of money, or maybe I drink, or maybe I don't know what else, all the things. And so there's these kind of system that we develop within ourselves after experiencing trauma. So if we can, first, when we notice we're hurt, right, or notice we're scared or angry, start to see it as, okay, what is this trying to protect in us? Where's the vulnerable part of me? That's usually where the inner child is. When we can let ourselves be vulnerable and let the protective features step to the side, normally we're going to find young parts of us that still believe, we're 5 years old living in that house, or we're 8 years old in that classroom, or whatever the space is. And so the joy of that is, as we connect with it, play therapy does come in, because, okay, now we're working with this little 5-year-old. And what does that 5-year-old need? Well, that it needs a blanket. It needs a stuffed animal. It needs just to be held or rocked. So it is funny working with adults and having training in play therapy, because a lot of times as we connect with these younger parts, it is helpful to just have toys around for them, to care for those parts of their heart, for sure. So,
And so when you're processing the inner child work, so these feelings have come up, do you process them as if you are a child, or do you process them as an
hmm
adult looking at the past?
Great question. Yeah. So I tend to work with people as an adult looking at the child. That's the way I like to approach it. The reason I like to do that is our authentic self, right? The self that holds all the resources and compassion and curiosity. We really, that's where our healing power is held, is in our authentic self. That child part is a part of us, and it holds value and it holds stories. But I tend to want to really connect with that adult self and have that part, that self, I should say, not part, help the child part. And so the reason I like to kind of turn it that way is it helps strengthen the connection within the person. So if I can connect with my 5-year-old part and I can help my 5-year-old part, not my therapist, then now I have this stronger internal communication within myself rather than this 5-year-old is now connected to my therapist, you
Yeah.
know? So I try to really stay, if they're able to. Sometimes people can't and they need the therapist to hold that spot for a little while. But typically, I work with the adult and they turn towards that part of them that holds the hurt and they, what do you need? How can I help? What do you want to share with me? And then what's cool about that is there's trust that gets repaired within yourself. Because a lot of times those childlike parts have been shamed in terms of like they have to stay hidden and unseen. And so as the adult, we can say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't let you be seen. I'm sorry I didn't let you feel heard. And there can be repair internally with ourselves. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that definitely does. It's
Okay.
sort of another question for me. So if a child is processing from a young age,
Yeah.
do their child parts grow up with them? Like, so
Right.
do they not have an inner child anymore? Like,
Right. I think, that's a great question. It seems like there's more integration, right? So there's less disconnect within themselves. Yeah.
so
It is
there'll be a, there'll still be a child within them, but it's not, it's like integrated and part of them and it's not wounded
exactly.
and it's and separate. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think even for those of us who don't have trauma, there still are parts within us that are there. And so I think the goal, as far as what I've seen is helpful, is not that there's not parts, but do we communicate? Do we share? Are we open within ourselves? And so a lot of times with people, I'll ask them or invite them to make a meeting space. For me, it's on my yoga mat. At the end of a yoga class is when I like invite all my parts, like to be with me. Like we're open, we're safe, we're relaxed, and I just want all of me to be present for that process. Or if I'm in a session and I get triggered or stirred up, or I'm interacting with my kids, I can notice like, oh, that's my people pleaser that's shown up and feels like I've got to make everybody happy. Let me kind of reassure her that we're good and move forward. You know what I mean? So I think we're always going to have this kind of part aspect to us, but is it open? Is everybody welcome? Are all the parts of us welcome to be seen and heard and cared for? That's really the goal.
And then, so when you have, as an adult, you have some kind of habit that you use to avoid the feeling.
Yes, right.
Is that coming from your inner child? So,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that work with play therapy? Because some people can say, oh, it's playful for me to go out and have a drink with my friend.
Right. Yes,
So
right.
how does that all play
Ooh,
together?
I love that. That's a great example. Yeah, using alcohol. Like, is this me am I celebrating or am I numbing? You
Yeah.
know? And it probably can change as the night goes on. So I think I like to personally think of things on a spectrum. So if we use alcohol, right? There's totally abstaining, and then there's, alcoholism and, dependence, right? And in between, there's maybe developing a dependence to it, maybe using it to like relax at the end of the day. And I would say once it becomes a source of I'm trying to use this to feel better, that's when I get concerned. Like, you know, because we're not attending to whatever doesn't feel good. We're kind of numbing it or ignoring it. Um, so I would say when you feel any kind of distress, maybe you've had a hard day and maybe you're replaying the story of the day in your mind and you're beating yourself up about something you said or did, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would encourage an adult in that moment, to just kind of ref- give yourself that reflective distance. Like, notice that thought, notice that emotion you're having as your authentic self who has the resources and the curiosity to help. So if I can notice what it is, okay, what is that? Am I accusing myself? Am I saying, oh gosh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that? Or gosh, they're not going to be my friend anymore, they're going to reject me. What is the fear? And then what does that fear need? Does it need just reassurance from me? um does it need to share and talk with someone in my life that I trust, and I can just sort of let that out and notice it with them? So I think but if I'm at like a birthday party and everybody's celebrating and having dinner and I have a glass of wine, that is kind of just enriching and fun and part of the celebration, right? And so, I think we have to just be careful with some of the stuff that can turn into a way to numb and not care for the parts of us that hold hurt or distress. Yeah, and with kids, it's interesting. I bought, oh shoot, I should have brought it for you to see. I had this purple gorilla that's like, I don't know, I think it's filled up with sand and it's really heavy. And so some of my kids that are really angry, they can just like drop it, throw it, punch it, kick it, and nothing, it doesn't hurt it,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so that for me is kind of like alcohol is for adults, right? Like it's good for them. They need to let it out. They need to move their bodies, but at the same time, like at some point, this can't be the only thing you do. You can't just punch things to feel better. And so with kids, trying to help them first with maybe the first time is in the therapy session, like you can be angry and you can be mad and it doesn't have to be out of control and it doesn't have to be bad. But also like where do we go from here? What do we do? And so I feel like things like that, like my little purple gorilla, I have to be careful with my kids to say, okay, it's important to notice it and let it out, but you still need to stay in charge of your anger and not let your anger be in charge of you. And it's hard for kids. They're so emotional. They just feel it and then they act. So helping them build that sense of strength in the presence of these big emotions takes practice, and helping. So
So how did you get into play therapy?
um I always, always wanted to work with kids, and I think it's because of my own inner child. And most play therapists will tell you that. They're like, I'm working with kids to help my little one inside of me who needed a safe place, or had a safe place in the midst of, you know, mess. Um, so for me, I had a pretty severe learning disability growing up. And my educational therapist was very patient and very kind and really helped me get on track with being able to learn, being able to concentrate. And part of it was not just a cognitive thing, but it was part of like the stress of home life and how that was affecting me being able to learn. And so having a person work with me in such a patient, caring way really like built this lifeline inside of me that just is just like this golden thread through my life that I'm just so eternally thankful for. And I wanted to be that for kids. I wanted to build within them some sort of sanctuary where they could feel seen, heard, cared for, but also like helped in a practical way to get through it and to come out of it. And so it really was just the love of the grown-ups in my life as a kid, and then wanting to kind of reach back and help the kids around me.
Well, that's beautiful. Jenny, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh,
This has
thank
been such a
you.
great and enlightening conversation.
Oh.
And so fun. Yeah.
Oh, good. I know it's funny how sometimes it's hard to talk about these deep, vulnerable things, but it doesn't have to be super duper heavy either. You know,
Yeah.
we can be open and soft, but we don't have to be overcome by it either. You know.
Yeah. Well, where can people find you?
Okay, so I am on Instagram under Jenny Russell Hornby, so it's my full long name, and I post a lot there. I have a YouTube channel um, where those are videos for kids, and they're geared for kids. So we call it Miss Jenny's Neighborhood. It has like a total Mr. Rogers feel. I didn't mean for it to, but it does. And it's just trying to talk to kids and give parents a place like where they can maybe watch the video with their child and talk about things like losing a pet or handling anger or being afraid, or scared of their first day of school or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have that. And then my website is I always mess it up, which is probably not a good sign that it's not a great website. But Miss Jenny Hornby, let me see. Yeah, Miss Jenny Books. That's where I'm messing it up. MSJENNY Books, BOOKS.com. So that has links to the Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, where you can buy some of the children's books and activities that I have, to bring families together to talk about things, but in a fun way. Like, my book made for this is literally an otter family. It's not people all distressed, right? It's otters, and it's in, kind of a fun setting. And I just find kids, especially when they're talking about hard things, if we can talk about this otter or we can talk about this puppy, it's easier to talk about it that way before we talk about like, oh, my fear or my
Yeah.
anger. So MissJennyBooks.com is probably the best place to get started to find the resources. Yeah.
That's great, Jenny. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you.